Hi, we are Utah Saints.
Before we recorded the first album, between us we had a bit of experience. I started on a Yamaha music computer called a CX5, which was a real nightmare to program, but it had a MIDI out, and I moved from that to an Atari, and I was always analysing tracks, and my first sequencing was probably on a Roland SH-101, where the first thing you do is try and rip off the bassline to I Feel Love. So we got a bit of experience with electronic music, and I was heavily immersed in the European side of things, which was called EBM, electronic body music, and I was learning a lot about sampling from bands like Public Enemy and the Young Gods and Front 242 from Belgium, and that was the way I came at Utah Saints.
I started out with turntables, and I progressed into going into studios with an engineer, not knowing anything about how to use the gear, and just kind of picking things up. And then obviously when I met Jazz, I picked more things up, and I bought myself an Akai S950 and a little Korg keyboard, and learned and an Atari, and started to learn Cubase.
So musically speaking, when we started Utah Saints, our biggest, well, we had loads and loads of influences. I was DJing funk and disco and a little bit of house, and Tim was and electronic music from industrial music as well. But I was interested in metal. My favourite bands at the time, and probably still, is Motorhead. So I was bringing I had lots of those kind of influences. At the same time, Tim's influences would be...
Yeah, my influence would be like people like Public Enemy. At a very young age, I used to go to these all-dayers in Nottingham at Rock City and see bands like... I saw people like Mantronics, Public Enemy, Run DMC, Stetsasonic, LL Cool J. So I got a real... I got the bug for hip-hop and turntablism. But at the same time, I liked disco, and I did like electronic music, and I like bands like Human League and Depeche Mode. So there was always a kind of like electronic music influence in me.
I think the thing about influences is that it's good to take as wide a range as possible, because you start to realise how many things different tracks have got in common, especially around structure and dynamics and just the power of something. So I think what we realised, first time I went to a rave, I realised that it was as exciting for me as going to a Motorhead gig, because it was just an overwhelming experience of good sound, good music, and good production, good lights, and all those kind of things. So it's really good to listen to as broad a palette of music as you possibly can, and we pile all those influences back into Utah Saints. So our approach over the last 30 years since making that album, our approach to making music has changed, in that we do everything in the box now. There's a lot of nostalgia about old gear, older retro gear, and getting the authentic sounds. But we've always kind of just worked with whatever is the most straightforward way of getting a noise close to the noise that is in our heads. And that happens to be in the box now. I mean, we've got very little nostalgia about some of the gear, because you get a synth, and I can remember some of the Moog patch-based stuff. You'd have to patch loads of bits together, then mess about with all the various parameters within that to get one sound. And then if you looked at it funnily, literally, if the temperature changed in the room, the sound would change with it, or the tuning would go, or something. So that used to just drive you mad. From a creative flow point of view, trying to make music, I don't think we can deal with that. We haven't got the patience. So now everything's in the box, and we understand, because keeping our sound is not just about staying in the 90s when we started. It's about being up to date now and working out what we want, what the possibilities are. And because the possibilities are endless, we're kind of focusing a little bit more perhaps on the music side of things than the sonic side of things, because the sonics are going to sound good anyway.
Well, on our first record, we worked with limited, as we've been saying, we worked with limited technology. So a few things that became hooks in records happened by mistake, like things you're having to use pitch bend to get a sample in time, rather than, say, now we'd work on something like Ableton, and your go-to thing with a sample would be you put it in and you just warp it to change the, to get the time, something in time. Whereas back then we would time stretch something, or we'd use a pitch bend, and out of that would come something new and that you wouldn't naturally have happened. So I think where we've taken that forward is in the equipment that we use now. As Jez says, the possibilities are limitless, but we try to sort of maybe just confine ourselves within a few things and learn those things really well. Never read manuals and then try and make things do things that they shouldn't, because that's where creativity flows.
So currently we're working, I mean, we never stopped working in music. So we've always been DJing, putting on our own nights, making our own music, doing remixes for things, doing tracks when they've kind of come up. So most recently, last year we had a track on the end of a Steve Buscemi film that he was doing. We had some trailer music for, I think, on HBO, which was Ridley Scott that was producing it. At the same time, we're constantly working on new Utah Saints tracks. We did a video game called Final Vendetta, which was like a kind of pushback to Street Fighter. So yeah, we've done quite a few video games over the years. We're currently working with Jason Bradbury from the Gadget Show, trying to go like a Kickstarter for a film that he's doing. So we need to get that over the line, and if that happens, and the Kickstarter happens, then we're going to try and curate the soundtrack for that. And then we also over the summer we did a track for CBeebies, and we've got a little project going with Mr. Maker, because he's in the whole creative world, and that's been really interesting. And then we're out DJing. We've been out DJing every weekend. And we do a whole heap of different gigs. So I think a big thing for us was we did the 100 Club in London, and we took an entire production in that. But we've done everything from Camp Festival, big festival main stages, through to really relatively small underground kind of club raves, basically. So we're still out every weekend enjoying DJing, and that feeds back into our own music. And we're still, there's a lot of music coming out now which is trying to emulate the early 90s dance sound, and we understand more than anything the dynamics of a rave, and the importance of having communal moments really in gigs. And that's every gig we do, we try and generate quite a few times where everyone's in the same moment, and that's a brilliant escape from reality sometimes. Yeah, it's important for us as well, just to keep on top and keep up, let's say we still keep up to date on everything that comes out each week, as well as, we get asked to play on a lot of old school things, and we do certain old school events, which is cool, but even with that, we have to take the tracks and re-edit them and rework them, and we have to keep evolving, creating, and kind of pushing the boundaries, rather than just going out and playing the same records, because that's kind of, as much as it's cool and it was a great part, things move forward and things change, and we're trying to always push things forward. Yeah, we're making our own edits to play out live. We're experimenting with different effects. We're trying. Tim's always on top of all the DJ tech as well, and then we're constantly learning new plugins for Ableton. So that's all of that stacks up to like a full-time job. We're still doing music from the minute we get up to the minute we go to sleep every day. So, and that's been the pattern for Utah since we started.